Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. In the previous tutorials of setting the NPC spawner up, we are getting pretty far now that we've got random NPCs spawning. They have different costumes, materials, and it looks decent. It's beginning to populate the world. But one memory optimization we're going to do is something called object pooling. You may or may not have heard this term all over programming tutorials, but it's something really simple that we're going to add in just to give us a small performance boost, so later down the line when it's in a real game, it's going to be very low memory. So let's get started. So what is object pooling? Well, object pooling really is just creating a pool of actors that we can reuse when we need to. That over here you have a box, a pool if you wish, and this is currently empty, there's nothing in it. But every time we want to spawn an NPC at the moment, we just grab the NPC and we spawn them into the world. And then we need to spawn another, we spawn into the world. But then if we get far away, this NPC is deleted. And then we spawn another NPC. But what if instead of deleting it, we instead simply grab it and say, hey, go back to the pool, like that. The pool's totally invisible, you can't see it, you can't see anybody in there. But then the next time we need to spawn an NPC, we say, hey, do you need to spawn as a black weird mold heart looking thing? Yes, well, we'll just reuse that. And you might think, but surely just destroying and respawning is easier. And whilst it is easier, it's not as performant. Because if you imagine all of the little steps Unreal has got to go into in order to spawn an actor in the world, and then allocate the memory to it, and then make the graphics pipeline render it in the world, and then when you destroy it, it's got to get all of that memory, it's got to unallocate it, it's got to do a bunch more stuff. So if you're having rapid fire things like NPCs spawning or actual bullets firing, not like line tracers, but if you've got physical meshes, rapid things that you're going to be reusing often, it's a lot easier to just store it in memory already because you take the hit at the start, and then whenever you need it, just simply drag it out of the pool and reuse it. So this way you're bypassing all of the creation, all the destruction, all you're doing is having it in the world, telling it to stop rendering it and telling it to render it again. There is, of course, some aspects to this that we need to look at. So, firstly, we are not just using the same black dot over and over again. If we are, this would be really easy. But, for example, we have a black line, a red half line, a red circle, a red square, you know, we've got all the different character profiles. If we need to spawn a knight, we don't need to be spawning an Egyptian. For the random costume, we can either store or ignore that, that's fine. So we need to find a way to actually do this then. So at the start of the game, our pool will be empty. And then as we add things into the world, if we need to destroy them, we move them into the pool. Meaning the next time we want that specific thing, we can reuse it super easily. So let's jump into Unreal. So depending how deep you want to go with the pooling, depends entirely on your game and how you feel. So what I mean by that is in our NPC spawnables here, we've got the two different spawn profiles and we're probably going to want to keep them separate. If we're in a night area where the majority of the population is knights with the odd Egyptian, we don't want to be pooling all the Egyptians and having no knights. It'd look a bit weird. But equally, if we go into here, the meshes, we probably don't need to worry about that too much. Maybe you do want to. If you've got a named character, for example, I'd probably look elsewhere to spawn those in. But for meshes, I'm not, at least in this tutorial, going to worry about that so much. So if we pool an assassin and we need to spawn another knight, another Egyptian, I'm not going to worry about the specific mesh of it. I'm just going to say, just re-grab the assassin, it's free. And of course you could always add some coding to randomize this eventually, but don't forget, as we are going to be moving through the game, not many people are going to be stood there looking at the characters trying to pinpoint every single version of it. So what I'm going to do for mine is I'm going to pool the type of actor that it spawned, so an Egyptian or a knight or whatever profile it belongs to, and then that's the limit that I'm going to do on mine. If you want to take it further, the meshes specifically, or even the materials if you want to, you can. It may lead to more objects being pulled than actually spawned in, because if you think about it, we've got a ×2 random there, then another ×4 there, then another ×12 there. That's a lot of random variations. So I think a nice line is, am I spawning a knight? Yes, here's a pool, just grab an object that we've already calculated before. If you want to do the other stuff, maybe you just grab the actor and change its mesh, that's also an option. But yeah, so where do we start with this? So the most efficient way I'm thinking of doing this, which makes it more expandable and works really nicely, is we're going to create a new array inside our NPC spawner, which is going to store not only the spawn profile, so should it be Egyptian or knight, you can also optionally add in your meshes or your materials, however far you want to take it, but it's also going to store the actual spawned NPC, but deactivated to beyond everything we can. So they won't tick, they won't have collision, they won't appear on any map, they'll just be gone from the game, but they'll still exist in memory. A little like in a data layer, how you have it, and you simply deactivate it, it's still there, but you can't do anything with it. I'm going to come in and I'm going to go right click, blueprint structure, and I'm just going to call it s_NPC spawner pool, and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to set the first one, our PDA NPC spawn profile. And this is going to be which profile. Is it Egyptian? Is it knight? Whatever we need. Next, I'm going to add an array of our spawn pooled NPCs. And I'm going to set this to my base generic type of NPC. So in my case, a BP NPC. Now you might think, why are we using an object reference for it? Well, if we're spawning them in the world and we want to hold on to their memory so we can reuse them later, we can't cache them anywhere. We can't get their soft reference. We need them loaded in the world, ready to action at any moment. So we need a hard reference to them, and it needs to be an array, like so. Now at this point, if you wanted to expand this to have specific criteria for what they need, so for me, if their profile matches, I can pick an NPC, or I can spawn a new one. But if you wanted to add the specific meshes, add a variable in here. So say you'll call it the mesh, and I'm not going to do this, I'm going to delete this in a moment. It will be a type of single or array, and you can pick their static mesh or their skeletal mesh, depending how you want to filter it. And then later when we get to the query stage of where we find the NPC profile, I'll also mention that you just expand it to look for your mesh as well, and then pick a pooled NPC. But I'm just going to delete that one for mine for now, like I say. Then back on our NPC spawner, I'm going to add a new variable at the bottom called pooled NPCs. And I'm going to set it to our new type of SNPC spawner pool. And I'm going to right click it to make it an event. And then I'm also just going to make it private because nothing ever needs to interact with this. I think if something else is coming to the NPC spawner to modify the pooled NPCs, you're going to run into a big problem later on in the game. So with this pooled NPCs now, we actually need to add into it when we destroy an NPC. So let's start with that because that'll be the easiest one to do. But what I am going to do is just make sure I've ticked the eyeball on pooled NPCs because then we'll be able to see it in the game actually working. And then inside our check NPC distances function, this is the one that loops over NPCs and destroys them if they're too far away. Instead of destroying them, I'm actually going to delete that, and I'm going to keep the remove because we don't want them to be part of the spawned NPCs, because if we're removing them from the world, even if we're pulling them, they're not a spawned NPC anymore at that point. They're just a vague matrix of memory allocation that we're going to reuse. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our pooled NPCs, and I'm just going to find the current profile they belong to. And then, from our pooled NPCs, I'm just going to do a for each loop off of it, and then I will do a break on the array element. And this is going to get us all of the existing pooled NPCs that we've got, and it'll give us what profile they're assigned against and the NPCs that belong to it. So with the NPC profile, how do we check which profile this NPC belongs to? Well, at the moment, we actually can't, because we don't have a type from the NPC to their profile. Because if we did that, we'd have a circular reference, because the profile would say, this is the NPC, and the NPC would say, this is my profile. That's called a circular reference, where you ask one thing, you try to follow the path, it leads you back to the path, and it can cause some things to break. I know when I used to work in Unity, if you had a circular reference anywhere, it will just not compile. Whether they fixed that in the newer versions, I'm not sure, but you physically couldn't compile if you had any type of circular reference. So what we need to do is we need a way to store what profile this NPC belongs to without actually creating a circular reference of some kind. So how do we do it? Well, what we can do is we can actually modify our spawned NPCs variable here, where at the moment we just store the NPC. But what if we were to use almost the same structure as this NPC spawner pool, but instead of being pulled NPCs, it'll just be the NPCs. So that way, every time we spawn an NPC, we say for this profile, we've spawned this NPC. And then when we add another one, oh, it's the same profile, we'll just add to the array. So what I'm actually going to do is come back to my NPC spawner pool structure, and I'm actually just going to call it NPC spawner stats instead. And then instead of calling it pooled NPCs, I'm just going to call it NPCs, because now we've got a really reusable one. And again, if you're using the meshes and stuff here, you can add the meshes in as you spawn them, so you know how to check. So before we crack on with this one here, let's go and modify our spawned NPCs variable to instead be a SNPC spawner stats, and it'll say change it, and then I know that a lot of things are going to break, and that's okay because we need to modify it. So you see we've got a bunch of errors, but that's okay. So with this one here, this is where we first add the NPC to it. But we can't just simply add to the new structure because we need to check if it already exists first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function called check spawn NPCs profile. And I'm going to pass in the profile called NPC profile, and it will be our PDA NPC spawn profile. And then I'm going to drag in our spawned NPCs. Then I'm going to drag off and do for each. And this first section is simply going to loop over all the spawned NPCs and see if this profile exists anywhere. So I'm going to break off and simply do equals equals. And then from here, I will drag back and get our NPC profile by going get NPC profile. And if it's true, then it means that profile already exists. So what I'm going to do is just drag off the NPCs here and do add. And connect it to the true. And then for the add here, I'm going to drag all the way back to the function and let go to add the NPC in. So I'll just rename that to NPC. And then I'm going to disconnect it by holding Alt, coming back and just dragging off and typing get NPC like so. And then from here, we can simply type return now because we don't need to be looping over the rest of it because we've already added it. If it's false, then it means that profile isn't found yet, so we can just ignore it for now. However, if it gets to the completed, then it means nothing's returned, meaning we've not added the profile yet, which is totally fine. It just means we're just a bit early or we've not hit it yet. So in that case, what I'm going to do is grab the spawned NPCs, and I'm simply going to drag off and do add, and then connect it to the completed. I will drag off of this one and do make. And for the area profile, I will just drag in the area profile, like so. And for the NPCs, I will simply drag off and do another make, and I will simply connect our NPC into it, like so. So this NPC will be the start of this one. So let's just add some comments to it. So here, final check, no profile found, add profile and NPC. This one over here, let's just drag it across, will be add the NPC to the found profile. And then finally, this big chunk of change over here will simply be find the profile. I'm just going to add a return at the bottom of here just so it matches the one up there. I'll come and tap my little plus icon to add it in. There we go. And now that we've got our check spawned NPCs profile, it's actually not a great name, so I am going to rename it to add spawned NPC to profile. Because now it doesn't just check for the profile, it also adds them to it. So back on our event graph, instead of doing this bit here, what we can actually do is drag in our add spawned NPC to profile code, connect it up like so. The spawn character is that one there, and the spawn profile is our profile right here in the variables that we've already cached, like so. I'll select all of them and just come and click the plus icon just to add them into the comment like so. And now that's going to build up the new variable there, but we've still got some more errors to fix, so let's jump around all of these. So on here, on our should spawn NPC, we're just checking if it meets the max allowed spawns. So we actually need to do this a little bit differently now, because we can no longer just get the length of this, because the length may ever only be 1 or 2. But inside of that, we're going to have a lot more NPCs. So what I'm going to do is just come and create a new function called get NPC spawned count. And this is going to be a simple function. All we're going to do is get our spawned NPCs and loop over them. Then I'm going to break off of it. And then where we've got the NPCs, I'm going to get the length of it. And I'm going to promote this to a local variable called NPC count, because you can see it at the bottom. And then I'm going to delete it and then drag it back in as a get and do a plus, so we add to it. It's just a nice quick way for it to set the data type up and everything. And then I will set the NPC count like so. So what that's going to do is right at the beginning of this function, it will create this variable which will be by default be 0. Then it will come in, it will add the existing count to the length of it. So if the count is 0, add the length of say 1, it becomes 1. Then it loops over again, 2, 3, 4, 10. It might jump for some instances, and then we're all good. Then right at the end, I will just come and do a return, where I drag in our NPC count and just populate it on it like so. And I'll just rename this to count, why not? Because we can't have two things called NPC count. And I'm also going to come and tick purely because it just makes it easier to use in a moment. So back to where we were on the should spawn NPC. I can now simply drag in our get spawned NPCs count, and we literally have a variable that will count for us. How nice is that? So we no longer need the spawned NPCs. We can simply connect this to that, and then connect the branch to the input like so. So now this is going to loop over every single profile we've got. It will count all the NPCs and say, are we allowed to spawn an NPC, or have we reached our limit? So I'll hit compile and save, and we've still got some more errors, but we are getting down them. Next one, what's this one? Is the check NPC distances. This is the one that we're going to be modifying in a minute, so we'll ignore that one. I'll just connect to another one. So the final one it says that we need to fix is the function that we're already modifying. So let's crack on with this. So I'm going to delete the for each loop, and I'll just drag another for each off of this spawned NPCs. Then I'll give us a bit more breathing room, and I'll break on here. And then I'll give us some more space, and then I'm going to drag off of the NPCs and do a for each of this one instead. So it is a for each within a for each, but it's an organized for each within a for each. Equally, if you didn't want to do it this way, you could have just had an array of NPC and profile and have multiple profiles. I'm doing it this way, so at any moment, if we change districts later and we need to wipe an entire profile out, say we go, I don't know, from the Knights area to the Egyptians, but no Knights are allowed in the Egyptians, we can just wipe the entire profile without having to search through the list. It just makes it a bit easier in my opinion. So now we're looping over all the NPCs, so this is all correct again. We can hit compile and save, and you can see we're all good again. Then back over here, we essentially need to do the same thing we've already done. We either need to find the profile in the pooled NPCs, or we need to add it and then add the NPC to it. But we've already got a function to do that, you may say, and that is correct. And in this function, we are at the moment just using the spawned NPCs one. But what if we can do both? And we can. So I'm going to drag from this array here and just connect it to here. So it sets itself up like that. And I'll just keep it called array, but I am going to move it to the top just because that's how it should work. There we go. And I'm going to delete the spawned NPCs. And everywhere I was using spawned NPCs, which appears to just be here, I'm just going to drag off and do get array instead. And now what this means is we can pass in which array we want to check, and it will only check that specific array, and then it will only add it to that specific array. Meaning back on our event graph, where we add the spawn profile here, we know which array we want to use. We want to use the spawned NPC, so we can drag that in and connect it to there, and that will add it to the spawned NPCs array. But back on our check NPC distances, we don't need to do that anymore. We simply want to add in our add, where it's going to add the current NPC, and we don't want the spawned NPCs one. We want our pooled NPCs like so. So we connect that to the array. But now how do we still get the profile? Well, we've already got it over here. As you can see, when we loop over all the profiles, let's jump back a bit. When we loop over all the profiles, we get the profile that that NPC belongs to. So let's promote this to a local variable called NPC profile. Current NPC profile. We'll connect it up like so. Because then we don't have to drag lines all the way over here. We can simply drag in our current NPC profile, right click, split, and just get our profile like so. And now we can connect it up with the true like so. So let's just comment this function a little bit because it's getting a bit large. So add NPC to pool. Over here, we are checking NPC distance. And then over here, we are, well, let's make some space so we don't wrap the wrong things. Over here, we are looping over all NPCs. There we go. So at the moment, you might think, aren't we just shifting an item from one array to another? And, well, we kind of are, but we've still got some more stuff we need to do to it. But speaking of shifting, we are indeed adding them to one array. We need to remove them from the other array. So where we're adding them to the pooled NPCs here, next we actually need to remove them from the spawned NPCs because we're no longer using them anymore. So what I'm going to do is copy our add spawned NPC to profile, and I'm going to duplicate it and do remove spawned NPC from profile. So the array we want to remove it from, we can keep all of those there, they're going to be the same. So we're going to loop over and try to find the profile they belong to. That's all going to stay the same. However, instead of adding them here, what we're going to do instead is simply come and type remove item. And we're going to connect it like so, and connect it, the NPC to it and to the true. So instead of add the NPC, we'll do remove the NPC from the found profile. So that removes them from spawned NPCs. Now, we don't actually need a final check on this one. But what I am going to do for safety is add a print. And I'm going to say error NPC profile not found. Because if we get to this stage, we're trying to delete an NPC that never existed in our list of spawned profiles, which is a problem. And it means something's gone wrong. So I'm not expecting to see that. But if we do, then we can try and look at it and figure out what's gone wrong. And now with our new function, I'll go back to check NPC distances. I'll add in our new function. The array that we want to remove from is our spawned NPCs. The profile is our current profile, and the NPC is the current NPC, like so. So let's connect it all up. And then we'll wrap it in a comment, remove NPC from spawner. Now, in theory, let's give it a go. What I'm expecting to see to confirm this is working is the spawned NPC should tick up. But every time an NPC is despawned, then the pooled NPC should tick up instead. So let's give it a go and see if we get any errors. So normally when I'm doing the videos and we get it edited, if there's a mistake at a section that we do, normally I put the fix in with it so you complete the function in its entirety and you're not having to come back to it. However, this is a very important key part of using a structure that I think deserves its own little section, to be honest. So that's why we've done it separately. But as you've just saw, the NPC spawner didn't work properly, and that's okay. So the reason is to do with arrays and structures and the way they work. The way we're doing it at the moment, we're modifying the array that belongs to this structure, but all we're doing is modifying a version of this. But when this structure creates this array, it pretty much sets it to what it needs to be. So what the issue is when a structure contains an array, it simply marks it as a normal array, meaning the first time you set it, that's the size it's going to be. It's a fixed size. So in this case, we add an NPC to it, the size is 1, that's it. It doesn't get any bigger. I think we add it down here, yeah. So when we make the array here, we're setting the size to 1, and it will never expand past 1. If it was a normal array inside here, it will probably just work fine as a normal list that automatically grows. However, when it's inside a structure, and the way we're doing it here, it simply sets its size to a fixed 1, even though it's an array. So we have to tell it to expand itself, and that's really easy to do. But it's a key part, like I say, of using structures with arrays that I wanted to keep in separately so we know. I'm going to drag off this struct here, and I'm going to press R to drag it across here, and I'm going to type set members in struct like so. I'm just going to unattach my comment. There we go. And inside here, in the properties, we can say which properties are we going to modify. So we know we're going to modify the NPCs like so we can tick that on. So now if we do our modifications to this array, but at the moment we can't add the array in, because if we re-add that one, it's not going to work because that's limited to 1. So what I'm going to do is promote this array here to a local variable called local NPCs, and I will connect it to the loop body and to the branch. I will then disconnect this array add here, and I'm going to add my local NPCs instead. So we're finding the correct profile. We are setting a copy of the array that we want to modify. We are then adding to that array, which is increasing it because it's not inside a struct, so we're all good. And then, right at the end, we are setting it back into the struct here with the new fixed size, like so. But then we actually need to tell the structure and the array that we've actually changed this. So I'm going to right click and do get array, which is going to get our variable. And then I'm going to do set array element, like so. And I'm going to connect it up. And the target array is our array. The struct, the item is our item that we've just created there. Now the key thing here is the size to fit. As you can see, the array will expand to the current size, meaning everything inside it will increase, such as the array of NPCs too. And then finally, we just really need the index, so I'll promote this to a local variable, profile index, and we will run over this in a moment, do some tidy up, and we'll go over the code so everybody knows what we're doing. And I'll just add it to the end here. And there we go. So we've now cleaned it up. So let's go over the code one more time to make sure everybody knows what's going on. So we're looping over the array here, which is any array we pass in, whether it's the pool or the normal one. We are then storing the index, so 0, 1, 2, 3 of the profile we're looking at, and the array of local NPCs so we can modify it later. If the profile exists, so we found the correct profile, we're modifying our local NPCs array to add in the new element. We're then adding that back into the struct, and then we're setting the struct in the array. Otherwise, we're coming to the bottom and we're just adding it like normal. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a little bit more work, but it does seem to work. So if we try it now, we should see that the NPC is spawned. Let's wait for another one. If I tap F8 and go to our NPC spawner, you will see it is now populating it. And as the NPCs grow, it does indeed add them to the array. Well, it would. I've capped mine at 4. So if we change it to 6, you can see the NPCs are populating correctly, which is good. However, it does mean we also need to go and modify our removal function to do roughly the same thing. So I'm going to come back to my add spawned NPCs, and I'm actually just going to honestly come and copy it all. And then go back to our remove spawned NPCs, and I'm going to delete it, except the print, because we need that. I'll paste it in, because it does roughly the same thing, but there's one key difference at the end, which is the removal. And we don't need any of the completion stuff. Plug that into the completed. Then it comes in. It will have the profile index, so we'll promote it to a local variable. Promote the NPCs to a local variable. Then instead of add, we will simply do remove. Connect it all up. Then our local NPCs will be updated back into it like so. just make sure you connect the actor location when checking the NPC distance, otherwise you are going to spend 20 minutes wondering why it's not working. So, I have also added a little text function just above the NPC's head, just like that, just so we can see in the world their distance, because I wanted to see why it wasn't working. And if you want the code for that, it's literally just a text render, and in the event graph I've just gone into event tick, set the text to the distance between the player pawn's location and the actor location, which is the NPC, set the text, and then I'm using the find look at rotation from the current actor and the player, setting the z-axis of the text renderer to make it always face you. Something dead basic, but you'll see if I try it now, when the NPC spawns in, they will have a ticker above the head showing me the distance, and if any of them reach 2000, they will be moved from the spawned NPCs into the pooled NPCs. So you can see he's just now bounced over 2000 distance away, and the spawn function has checked if any of the NPCs should be deleted. And then back in here, you can see the pooled NPCs now has that NPC inside of it there. And you'll see, because we've only got 4 in here now, another one has spawned. So even though our max spawn is 4, we technically have 5, like so, because we've not correctly pulled him yet, but it's a start. We're in the right location. And if I keep it running, I think I had a command for running faster time, but I can't remember it. Basically, we'll get a lot more NPCs, and the pool will keep building up. You'll see as they run away, or we'll speed it up, I'll run away. All those NPCs will spawn more around us, even though they're still there, because the pool is successfully grabbing an NPC and telling us, hey, there's a free slot, spawn more NPCs. So you can see now, our NPC profiles have 0 Egyptians in range and 2 knights, but we've got a lot of actors in the pool ready to be respawned. So we're on the right path, ladies and gentlemen. So now that we've got the NPC pool array working and the standard array working, how do we actually stop an NPC from being active in the world? Because we used to call destroy, but at the moment we don't want to do that because that's not the point of pooling. We instead need to deactivate them from every level we can. There's probably plenty of different ways you can approach this, but for the ways we're going to do it, I'm going to get to the NPC that we are adding to the pool, so the current NPC, and then I'm going to set them hidden in the game, which would make them invisible. I'm then also going to deactivate their collision, so I'll do set actor enable collision, and I will deactivate their collision, so by unticking it. I'm then also going to deactivate their ticking, so they are not even, their event ticks, nothing's working like that. So we'll deactivate their tick. I'm then going to get the actor's AI controller. So I'll get their AI controller. And then from that, I'm going to do get component by class. And I'm going to get their brain component, which is how the AI system works. If you haven't got AI in your game or you're not using the brain component, just deactivate the AI however you can. For me, I'm simply going to drag off and do stop logic, and then I'm simply going to go off as well and do deactivate as well. So it can't restart itself, it's completely stopped. The reason, I will say pulled, and we'll connect it across like so. So if we comment all of this and say deactivate NPC, if you've got anything else on your NPC, like some object markers, you may want to remove those. If you've got some map markers, you're going to have to customize this for your game, but basically deactivate everything so they just don't exist in the world, even though they are there, really. So if I try it now, unfortunately Unreal doesn't have a, total destruction mode of an NPC when you're trying to pull them. So if I run away, that NPC at the back should disappear. There you go. But if I press F8 and press pause, he is still there, ladies and gentlemen, but he shouldn't be moving around, he shouldn't be doing anything. So pulled NPCs, you can see I've got an NPC here. If I click the little arrow, you can see he's still here. If I click play, He's not moving. He's not doing anything. He is frozen in time. He is hidden. And let's just make sure that I am correct, and we will run up to him and see if I can bump into him just to make sure collisions have been disabled. So I've still got map markers on mine, so I need to remove those, which I will figure out in a minute. But you can see, these NPCs are confusing me. I'm stood right on top. I can't collide with him. So we're all good. So you may not have map markers on yours. That's okay. I do on mine. So what I'm going to do is come and get my current NPC. Then I will get component by class. And I'll get the narrative marker, I think it's called. And I'll get the navigation marker, and I'll just destroy the component. And I'll just deactivate the component, like so. I think there's actually a glitch in the version of Narrative Navigator I'm using, and I don't think deactivating the marker actually removes it. But it should do. So, even though this might not work, I'll just test. In the last project I was working on, it didn't work properly. Has it worked? Yeah, it worked. Good, okay, so that bug's fixed. Look, there you go. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So you should now see, as I run around, these NPCs will only ever exist 4 times, because that's the amount I've got set. So as I'm running around, you can see all the NPCs have gone. Oh, they've gone as well. And we've got one guy there. If I press F8 and pause it, you will see our pool should be rich with NPCs. There you go, look. We've got like a ton of NPCs we can use, look. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. The pooling is almost there. We are now taking the NPCs, and instead of destroying them, we are just hiding them away. Now, they will exist in your outliner. As you can see, they're all here. But that's okay. Having them in your outline is fine because they're just non-existent. Because they're totally deactivated. Like I say, you may have some other functionality you will have to also modify. It really is a case-by-case basis. But basically, take a look at your NPC. Anything that's going to be ticking or working, deactivate as best you can. You don't need to go down every single component because don't forget a lot of these, such as my interaction system, my inventory, my damage, only works based on collision, and we've deactivated the collision. You can also technically move them into a new location if you really want to. So a common thing is to put them at 000 so you can grab them again if you want. I'm going to leave them where they are because if I'm running around and world partition kicks in, it's going to remove them from memory. So I don't want to move them to a position where world partition just erases them from memory. So, now that we've deactivated the NPC and we've pulled them, how do we actually grab them back out of the pool? That is the final stage to this. So, this function here for checking NPC distances does actually contain a lot of what we're going to almost reverse back to the other way. But for now, where do we put it? So back in our event graph, where we randomly get an NPC here, which is getting a random NPC, then we load the current profile, and this is where we then go and spawn it. However, at this point, we actually need to check the pool here to see, does this NPC already exist? If they do, we'll just reuse it. And then at that point, we choose whether or not we want to go down all of this path. So what I'm going to do is add a new function called check NPC in pool. And then the NPC is going to be our profile because that's what I'm doing. So I'm just going to call it NPC profile. At this point, if you want to get a specific static mesh and such, you will add it into this NPC pool function here because this is how we're checking to see have we got a value in the pool which is available to use. And then from here, I'm going to drag in our pooled NPCs. And I'm going to do for each. And then I will break off of this and simply drag off the NPC profile and do equals equals. And then drag backwards and do get NPC profile, which will get this value right here. And then add a branch, which is true. So at this point, we've checked that we've found a profile in here. The other thing I'm going to do, just while we're here, is actually move this up a little bit like so. I'm going to drag off the NPCs and do length. And then from here, I will just do more than 0, and I will combine these into an AND like so. And the reason we're doing this is we're now saying, does the profile exist in the list of pulled NPCs? Yes. Have we actually got an NPC's length to actually spawn? Can we put them in the game? And if that both of those are true here, then we've successfully found that we do indeed have an NPC to use. I'm going to drag off this true and simply do return. And then I'm going to grab this array element and I'm just going to press R to move it in a couple of notches and return it like so. Instead of output pin, I will do selected profile. And now this function will successfully check if we have an NPC profile or not. If we don't, I'm just going to simply return like so, which we should be able to hopefully is valid on to check if it's correct. And then back on our event graph here, we can now add in our check NPC in pool like so. The profile we want is our current spawn profile. But whilst looking at it now, I actually think we're going to modify it some more. So instead of check NPC in pool, I will do get NPC from pool. And then it will loop over, it will do all its logic to find an NPC. But then what we're going to do now is actually activate the NPC, reuse it, do everything we need. So I'm going to come back to the check NPC distance. And I'm basically going to come and copy, not the distance part, but everything after here. But then we're going to modify it. So copy all of that, get NPC from pool, add it just somewhere where it's not going to collide with everything, like so. There we go. So connect the true to it. So we found an NPC. We're going to add the NPC to the spawner. And we're going to add the spawned NPCs as the first array. The profile we want to use is this NPC profile parameter we've passed in. So we can just delete this and paste it there. The current NPC is the NPC that we want to add. So in our case, we're going to take the NPCs and do get. So we get the first NPC at the very top. It doesn't have to be anything special. So we can just connect that over to the current NPC there. So we're getting the first NPC. We're adding it to the spawner. Then we need to remove the NPC from the pool. So we'll get the pooled NPCs. The profile will be the profile. And then the NPC will be our NPC from here, like so. I think we can tidy this up a little, however. So what I'm going to do is promote this to a local variable here called selected NPC. And then instead of passing it, we can just drag off and do selected NPC, like so. And it's a lot nicer. No more lines flying everywhere. There. Get the selected NPC if it's available. We add them to the spawner, which is good. We then remove them from the pool because we've successfully put them back into the world, or at least treated them as they're back in the world. Then we need to deactivate them, but in our case, we're not deactivating them. Instead, we're going to reactivate them. So we'll do reactivate. The spawned NPC, we will make them not hidden anymore. We will drag off of this and do get selected NPC. We will make them have collision. We'll delete this one. We'll add it in. I could have named it the same thing, to be fair. We'll click enabled. We'll make sure their tick's enabled. We'll get their current AI controller. And we will not stop logic. We will simply restart logic to kick it back into action. But I don't think we can restart a deactivated logic. So I'm going to move this across a little bit. And then I'm going to activate it like so. And we'll connect it into there. And then we'll connect it back to here. It says, do you want to reset it? We'll reset it anyway because it needs to forget everything it was doing. And then finally, we will get the navigation marker in my case. And we will simply activate it as well. And this is where you will go through and activate the logic for anything else you want to do. So any of the components. And then once we've done all of this, I am indeed going to return. And instead of returning the selected profile like we were originally going to do, I'm actually going to return the selected NPC instead, because then we can apply any modifications that we need to it. We can come and delete this return down here. If we don't return an NPC at all, then it means technically we haven't got anything in the pool that's available, because this is going to catch it. If it doesn't, we've got a problem. So I'll hit compile and save. Now we jump back to our event graph. I will just recreate this function, get NPC from pool. There we go. So the profile we want is our current spawn profile. If the NPC is valid, then it means we've successfully spawned an NPC. So we don't actually need to do any of this logic anymore, but don't delete it. We need it just in case in a minute. And then I will move this and the is valid down more. Because if you think about it, this is valid here pretty much lines up logic-wise with this one right here. So we come in, we get an NPC from the pool. If the pool's empty and we haven't got one, then we need to spawn it, so it's not valid. We come in, we async load it, we spawn the NPC, we do whatever we need. We check if it's actually spawned just to cap any errors. And then the add spawned NPC to profile we're already doing as part of the cache, so we can drop that down here as well. And then we instantly come and set their mesh. So as I said earlier, I don't mind spawning the NPC's mesh once and then reusing it. I'm happy with doing it that way. So for me, I'm going to actually bypass all of this stuff until the very, very end. So I'll move this down like so. I'm going to bypass all of this back to the is valid here, which I'll change in a minute because it's probably just going to be better as an event. So we come in, we check the pool. If they exist, we're pretty much good. We can just go ahead with using them. However, if they're not valid because the pool's empty, for example, then we come in and we spawn an NPC and we add them to the spawner so they can be added to the pool afterwards. Then we go through, we randomize the NPC, we load the mesh, we load the material, blah, 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 and then we clear it off. If you did want the newly spawned pool actor to randomize their mesh, just connect them both here instead, like so. However, for me, I'm totally fine. You could even just spawn the materials if you really wanted to. So as I said, I'm just going to convert this to a newer function. So I'll do add custom event and I'll call it end character spawn. I'll add this to the code here. And then instead of doing all of this, I'll just simply drag off of this and do end character spawn like so. Untick it, I'll copy this function, drag it all the way back to the beginning and put it to there like so. And then finally I can get this, we'll just move it somewhere nicer down here. Look. There we go, that's a bit neater, isn't it? So ladies and gentlemen, that should be our pull system set up. Now, the pull system works better and more efficient the more of the same NPCs you have. So in your entire game, if you have 10 NPCs, the pull system will work really, really well because it won't be recreating them every time you walk away. It will just keep those ones. But if you've got like 1,000 variations of NPCs and you specifically want to get those variations, it might be easier just to ignore the pull system and just keep going. Because you have to weigh up the performance hits of storing those NPCs in memory and reusing them versus the performance hits you get from destroying and creating them, having the nav mesh set up and doing everything else every time. But for me, I've got a variety of NPCs, but I'm not bothered about respawning all of that just based on their profile, so mine should be okay. The only other thing I have just noticed that we need to fix is their location here, because otherwise they're going to spawn in a random place. That's not going to work for us. So what I'm going to do is actually promote this to a function called get NPC spawn location, and I'll mark it as pure because we don't need it to be anything random. Then in the NPC pool, I will go in right at the end after we've activated them and done everything. Before we return, I'm simply going to get the selected NPC. I'm going to set their actor location. And I'm going to paste in our new spawn location like that. You might be wondering, why didn't we just copy the code for that? Well, my dear viewer, we are coming up to the episodes where we start looking at the camera settings, where we don't spawn NPCs that are in front of you or, you know, in your peripheral vision where they spawn around corners or behind you. So if we've got one single function to do all of that logic, it means everything gets updated instantly for us. So let's give it a go and see what happens now. And I've died, so get back up. There we go. So we've got an NPC there. That's all good. So we'll call that, I believe she's a nun. So if we walk away and a jester, when they deactivate, there we go. When a new NPC, there you go. She respawned. And if we walk away, is the jester going to respawn? He'll only respawn if we need him to respawn. Jester was a knight one. These are all Egyptians at the moment. There we go. So if we can confirm this is working by looking at the NPC spawner. So if we drag this up, I'll just pause the game to not get any extra data. So we're only allowed 4 spawns. Let's see what we've got so far. So we've got 2 knights, so knight 1 and knight 0. And we've got Egyptian 2 there. Well, so that's 3. But in the pulled NPCs, we've got some profiles with a bunch of different empty ones. It took me a moment to click on, but no, it is indeed working. So you can see, as we watch the NPC spawn, if we just watch the Egyptian here, we'll close down the knight one. You will see, as an Egyptian spawns in, they'll be removed from the pool, but as an Egyptian removes, they'll be added down here. So if I get rid of it with the pause button, you can see we've got at the top, we've got 3, 2, 1, 0. If we wait till an Egyptian walks out of the way, there. So an Egyptian walked out of the way and then we needed a new one. So now it's become 3, 1, 0 and 2 has been moved to the pool. So 2 was deactivated and 0, I think, was added back into the world. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We now have a nice little cycle of NPCs in a pool that's really, really efficient. So there you go, it respawned an Egyptian again and did the same thing. Well, it toggled 1. There we go. So 2 Egyptians have been taken out. Yeah, they're all crowding around me. Clearly, they're really liking this tutorial, so they don't want to despawn. There we go. So we've lost a 3rd Egyptian, and you can see if we look around, we do indeed have 3 knight things. Yeah, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the pooled NPC system. In theory, it is possible to get more spawned NPCs than you've set as your maximum spawn, but that's only to populate the pool. And by that, what I mean is if we've set the max allowed to 4, but technically that 4 is split across 2. So if you spawn 4 Egyptians, and then they all get pulled because you need 4 knights, it will spawn 8 NPCs in total. If you really, really don't want that, what you can do is if you get to a point where you're spawning a new actor in here, because you've checked the pool, you can check the pool if it goes over your max allowed spawns and then delete it. Basically, delete stuff from it. So I know we said we're not going to do that, and it is something we're going to look at eventually, because we do need to clear up the pool as we're moving districts around. But if you start seeing a problem, then we can look at it as well. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was helpful. It was quite an in-depth one, this one, setting up the pool system, but it is an optimization that is absolutely worth it. In the next tutorial, we're going to try and approach the big one, the spawning them, not in your vision cone, out of the vision, the big drawing thing that we did, to make sure they don't spawn in front of you, really. And we shouldn't be deactivating them if you're looking at them either, because that just looks weird. As you can see, we saw him disappear, we'll see her disappear there. We shouldn't be seeing that, we shouldn't be seeing him spawn in front of us. So we'll work on the system where they only spawn far away in the fog, for example, or they spawn behind you or out of your vision. Not right next to you, because we did say we don't want to do that. So that's going to be a big one. But that type of thing is really what's going to make the game work. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was helpful. If you've got any issues, please leave a comment in below, or feel free to join the Discord if you're running into more issues. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.